Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's Lunch and Learn with me, Vicky Sutton of Safety Forward. And today we're going to discuss when do I need a personal risk assessment. Just to let you all know that this session is recorded and it will go out on our monthly newsletter if you do want to have a recap of the session today. We will have a question session at the end, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat and we'll pick them up at the end of the session today. So understanding personal risk assessments, I don't know whether you've all had involvement in the past with creating or being involved with a personal risk assessment, but the same as with any risk assessment, we have to make sure that obviously we're putting these in place. And there's various different reasons for us having these risk assessments. But the personal risk assessment, it involves evaluating the risks that the individuals may pose to themselves, others, and the organisation. And it may be required where we've got any medical condition that could potentially affect the individual's ability to perform their job duties safely, or it could be exacerbated by the workplace environment. So there's a few different factors that we would have to consider. As I said, like with any other risk assessment that we put in place, we are looking at health and safety risks. So we're going to be identifying potential hazards in the workplace. This can include anything from your machinery and your chemicals to an employee's day-to-day activities. But again, we're going to need to be looking at evaluating each employee's exposure to these risks. So for any of you that were unable to attend the webinar that we ran with regards to my employee tells me when they are pregnant, what do I need to do? We did discuss there about pregnancy risk assessments for workers, and we touched on there with regards to COSH products that may have hazardous symbols. So we just need to be aware of that as well if we have got anybody working with COSH products as well, if it's likely to cause any impact on the employee and their unborn child. We also need to look at any job specific risks. So we need to be considering tasks that an employee performs and any associated risks. So we could be looking at anything from working at height, handling of any equipment, manual handling, down to working environments, but we will break that down a little bit further on. Behavioural and mental health risks as well. So identifying signs of stress and burnout or any other mental health concerns that can impact on work performance or safety. Not everybody will voice that they are struggling. It could be down to workload, it could be personal reasons, but it's always good to identify where you do actually see a change in an individual and having that conversation with them. Compliance and legal risks, as with all risk assessments that we have in place, the same applies when we're looking at a personal risk assessment as well. We need to ensure that employees are aware, obviously, of any relevant laws, if we're putting any change into place as well, and how that may impact them on carrying out their roles, and also that legal risk to the business as well. So security risks, it's going to depend really on what that personal risk assessment is put in place for, but we also need to look at whether there's going to be any change that might impact on that security risk to either the individual or also to the business. And then we've got the external risks there as well. So considering how external factors may have an impact. So it could be anything from travel, remote working, or even interactions with third parties as well. So when we look at the personal risk assessment, we're looking at this, it's a systematic approach and that process to identifying potential risks that an individual may encounter. And obviously the primary purpose is to safeguard our employees' health and safety by mitigating those risks effectively. With any employer, we've also got that legal obligation as well, and there are a couple of considerations that we do need to just be aware of. So obviously we've got health and safety legislation. So again, with your personal risk assessments, these will still fall under your Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 and the Management of Health and Safety at Work regulations. And obviously these regulations are in place to mandate the risk assessments and to ensure a safe work environment as well. We have a duty of care to all of our employers to protect them from the health, safety and welfare of of all of our employees. So we will have I'll say generic risk assessments. We might have task risk assessments or area risk assessments in place. That duty of care still runs to each individual employee, where we may have to consider them for a personal risk assessment that is not covered by that general workplace assessment as well. Liability management. So again, if we've got somebody that's injured or harmed and a risk assessment wasn't conducted or wasn't adequate as well, then we've got that potential there of facing legal claims for negligence, as with any other risk assessment. But where we know an individual may need to have additional controls in place, we need to make sure that we are addressing those and documenting them in their risk assessment as well. And then compliance with the disability laws as well. So you may have people within the organisation that may have a condition where they may be their mobility may be impaired, or they may have various different other conditions that falls under disability. Now, with the Equality Act being in place, we've got to make sure that we are making those reasonable adjustments for employees with disabilities. Now, you may, if you've got more than one employee, you may need to consider as well, do I need to have a disability access audit carried out as well? And then we've got preventative action. As with any risk assessment, we want to make sure we've got proactive measures in place to help prevent any further injury or accidents to our employees that need that personal risk assessment. We want to reduce absenteeism where we can, and obviously avoid any potential legal disputes down the line as well. So going into the actual personal risk assessment in place. So when we put it in place, how will I know? So how do you know when we need to put that personal risk assessment in place? So all employees will not make you aware where they may have a condition, that it may be a hidden condition that we don't see, but sometimes we can be made aware from different other means where we carry out, for example, a DSE assessment within the business. So that can actually identify where somebody may have an ongoing medical condition. It may become apparent as you're going through that assessment with them. So it could be anything from managing their workload and stress to carpal tunnel syndrome and other medical conditions that actually come out in conversation that you may not be aware of. Now we've got medical on here, so that could be anything from a new or an existing medical condition. And this is where it's really important as a business that we do issue medical questionnaires, both on employment to a new employee and also on an annual basis, so that we can monitor either new or existing medical conditions as well. Where that condition has been disclosed to us, just remember that that personal risk assessment that we're carrying out, it's there to support that individual, and it's not there to be held against them. It's not there so that they feel that they're being singled out at all. It's there to make sure that we can support that individual, and that the business can put in any sort of reasonable adjustments either to their work or adaptations to their work environment to help that employee. It's really important that we stress that to them, that it is there to help them and that you want to put these things in place. So we've got short-term injury. So your personal risk assessment may not be an ongoing document. It might be for a particular injury that's occurred and it's a short-term injury. And this may be following an injury that's occurred either within the working environment or outside at home. But short-term injury, which will impact on their usual daily activities, will need to be produced to protect that employee through their recovery period. And it may be that you just have to make some adjustments to the work that they would usually carry out, and we may have to look at, do we need to actually move them from that current working position to carry out additional works in a different environment, but for that short term as well. And then we've got that return to work there. So that could be following an injury or an illness, long-term absence. Now that we might look at as part of a phased return to work, and that might be required, like I said, where somebody's been absent from the workplace following a longer term condition. But a personal risk assessment will be able to detail that stages of that phased return to work and what their duties might look like if there is going to be a change to their usual activities. Now, at this stage where we've got a returning employee, You may want to consider, do we actually need the involvement from an external occupational health if we want that professional medical opinion when we are writing those personal risk assessments. But like I said, remember, an employee may not want to disclose that medical condition as they might not want special treatment. So it's just making sure that we put them at ease and make sure that we are working with that individual as well. Now, where that medical condition can potentially impact on work colleagues, so if we have somebody that's got a condition where they may have seizures, there may be an impact on others in the business. So it's really good to get that involvement and get the employee on board to kind of work with you as well to make sure colleagues are also aware. So we've just got some examples on here of some medical conditions that you may be made aware of. Obviously, this list is not extensive. There's a lot of other conditions that you may come across. But we might have people that are diabetic, prone to fainting, or they might have respiratory conditions. So that could be COPD or asthma. We may have neurological conditions. So we could have an employee that's got MS or cognitive functions. Or where we've got people that are carrying out more of a manual task, we might have musculoskeletal issues that can be exacerbated by repetitive motions or heavy lifting as well. So that personal risk assessment will be required where we are made aware and we know that that medical condition has been disclosed to us, and that requires a management plan put into place as well. So what do I need to consider? So we've got a lot of things to consider, things like your access and egress, and that could be anything from, do we need a disabled parking space, where we've got a passenger lift if people need to utilise it. If we've got maintenance carried out, is there an alternative in place? Yeah, it could be working at home or working on a ground floor. Do we need to put a PEEPS in place if we haven't already got one? So that personal emergency evacuation plan. Do we need to consider the space where they're working in that area? Do we allow for movement of wheelchairs or people using walking aids? Do we have the use of an accessible toilet? Now, emergency information, it's really important that we keep this up to date for particularly employees that do have personal risk assessments in place. It's really useful if we've got more than one person that we can contact in the event that the only contact we have may be at work or they may not be unable to pick up the phone. Sometimes people have emergency contact information on their phones that they're happy to show you how to access as well. We need to consider fire arrangements. So we've mentioned PEEPS, but if we've got one in place, have we updated our fire marshals? Are they aware of the procedures? Sometimes people would like to have a nominated employee or a buddy to assist them in the event of an evacuation. And again, if we do need to include the use of an evac chair for somebody, we want to make sure that we've got trained employees that actually can utilise that chair effectively, and they are trained to do so. Where we've got to consider first aid and medication for an employee, again, we want our first aiders to be aware if they are likely to have to administer anything. That could be anything from an EpiPen or just how they manage that individual when they are feeling unwell at work. If they've got an ongoing condition, you may decide that they may be able to work from home, but you need to determine at what level then you would have to take a sick day from work. But just think about, do we need to provide a quiet space or a room for recovery, or do we need to bring any other equipment in, like a privacy screen or anything like that, just to give that individual a little bit of private space in the event that something were to happen. Display screen equipment. So we've mentioned DSE assessments, but it may be as a new condition arises. They may have been to see a medical professional and they may advise that we yet carry out another DSE assessment. Include this in your personal risk assessment, because any changes you make to assist with the medical condition, just put that into that assessment so it's documented as well. Now, where we've got use of equipment and machinery, Obviously, depending on the conditions that we are having to assess, it may be that we deem that employee unfit at that time to operate certain machinery or equipment, but that you're going to have to determine that depending on the condition that you are assessing. You might need to just adapt their role, but you may also need to actually remove them from certain types of equipment or operating forklift trucks or anything like that in the workplace. Working at height as well, is that employee still safe to carry out any work at height tasks? That might even be just using a hop up or a short step ladder, but again, depending on your condition, it's just something to consider. And the working environment. So think about, is their usual working environment is it still suitable to allow for any adjustments that you need to put into place? So have they got enough space around their working area? Do we need to think about reallocating people to a different workspace? It might be that the condition it could be if you've got a lady going through perimenopause, for example, they might need to be relocated under like an air conditioning unit or have access to a window that opens as well. Where we have people though that might be affected by noise in the workplace, and I'm not talking about sort of machinery and manufacturing, it may be just the hustle and bustle of an open work environment. We might need to consider things like noise cancelling headphones where we have sensory or autism or anything like that. But again, they will inform you if there's any special requirements that they need. So we might need to be thinking about adjusting working hours, working days, or allowing for additional breaks, and also really consider lone working. So can that individual still lone work, or do they need to have a buddy? Or do we need to have a new procedure put into place for checking in with individuals? So the communication part is really important, and it's really important that the employee is really involved with that personal risk assessment process. So it helps to put them at ease, and not only that, they'll be able to discuss with you how, in the event of emergency, the individual wants to be managed. So some people like a personal touch and reassurance, whereas others may say, can you stand back and leave me alone? And I will come to you if I need further assistance. But they will be able to talk you through every aspect of what to expect, symptoms that they may be able to communicate beforehand, and also how they like to be dealt with after the fact. We've had people that may be disorientated, they may cry, so it's really important to find out how they like to be managed. Also, where we can involve the line manager, so they are aware of the controls that are put into place, and also first aiders as well. But again, if we're unsure of how to create that personal risk assessment, contact your consultant, where we can set up a Teams call with yourself and the employee as well. So communication, how do we communicate that risk assessment? The same as with anybody that needs to know, we need to be issuing that risk assessment out to. And again, once it's been issued, make sure we're getting that signature to confirm that understanding as well. And when we think about who should be aware, so again, line managers, first aiders, and fire marshals, where that PEEPS has been put into place, and also HR as well, so it can go onto their records. And think about the review period. So it will depend on the type of injury or illness. Obviously, if it's short term, it won't particularly have a long-term review period. But if it's ongoing, it could well be that you're reviewing it on a shorter period of time. But again, if we've got deterioration, the review may be quarterly, maybe 6 monthly, but we may have that recommendation from an occupational health to say what the review period should look like for that individual. Just a little recap here on the benefits. So we are protecting the employee's health and safety. We're complying with any regulations. We're going to facilitate reasonable adjustments where we can. We've got the employee engagement, and we want to be seen as well to be promoting a positive working environment. But if in doubt, reach out. Your consultants will support you through this process. And also, again, if you do need a recommendation for any occupational health, we are happy to provide contact information for some recommended suppliers that we do work with.